investor friends, I'm Michelle Markey, and it's been quite a summer. I've had a lot going on that I'm sorry that I haven't been able to make as many YouTube videos of late, but my podcast partner, Sina Loneholt, and I have been keeping up better with our podcast called Investing Mastermind Podcast, if you want to see some of the latest that we've been talking about. And today I'm going to talk about one of my favorite super investors, none other than Warren Buffett, the 93-year-old CEO of Berkshire Hathaway at the time I'm recording this. And he's going to turn 94 on August 30th. And I'm recording this video a few days before, so you can probably guess what day of the week it is. But for now, I just want to catch us up a little bit about what Berkshire Hathaway did in the second quarter of 2024, as it's late August and the 13F filings came out in mid-August, and I'm a little bit behind, so please forgive me. And if you enjoy watching my videos and you get something out of learning about investing, I hope you'll like and subscribe to my video and YouTube channel, because it means a lot that you're here supporting, learning about investing, and trying to become a better investor yourself. So thanks for doing that. And with today, I wanted to talk about how Berkshire Hathaway sold probably half its portfolio holding of Apple. And we can see that since 2023, Berkshire's been gradually reducing from its all-time high of owning 915 million shares to now only owning 400 million shares. And to give you some math of what that looks like, we went from having Berkshire Hathaway own about $178 billion of Apple back in second quarter of 2023, or 51% of the 348 billion stock portfolio, to now only having 84 billion, or down about, let's round up to $95 billion in the second quarter of 2024, or only making up 30% of the $280 billion Berkshire Hathaway stock portfolio. So that's a reduction from the last time in Q1 2024 of about 50%, because they used to own about 789 million shares worth about 134 billion in the first quarter, and that made up 41% of the $332 billion portfolio. And before that, back in Q4 of 2023, they had owned 905 million shares, and that had been worth about 50% of the portfolio at 347 billion. So I know I jumped around a little bit, but you can see that from the first quarter of 2024, Berkshire had reduced 13%, and that's when Buffett had made the big announcement at the Berkshire Hathaway meeting that Berkshire had sold that much Apple. And back then I thought that was significant, 13%, and yet it looked like Berkshire would have even more in stock by selling another 50% of its Apple holding from that point in time. So the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting was back in May 2024, and around that same time, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, also announced that they were going to have a $110 billion buyback program. So based on that, it looks like whatever Berkshire had sold off of Apple, Tim Cook was more than willing to buy back those same shares. And it's as if the Apple stock hasn't really missed much of a beat. They went down as low as about like 165 a share back in the spring this year, and now they're at $228 a share the last I checked. So it's as if it didn't faze Apple that Berkshire Hathaway had liquidated about a total of, I'm going to say 56.3% of the original Apple holdings, because in total, it looks like Berkshire Hathaway sold about 515.5 million shares. So that's a lot. When I said earlier that they dumped about $95 billion worth of Apple, give or take. I'm sure they've gotten some profits. And supposedly Berkshire has done this because of mainly tax reasons, according to what Buffett himself seemed to suggest during the annual meeting this year. And he said that because perhaps the current capital gains federal tax rate of about 21% could go up in the future. So I wonder if Buffett is making a bit of a bet on who will be in the White House come this November, but let's see what kind of shakes out in the market. And now that's brought up the Berkshire cash pile to about $277 billion, which is up from last year. I think in the Q3 of 2023, their last all-time high was at $157 billion back then. And that's gone up by about $120 billion. So it's incredible how the amount of Apple that Berkshire has sold is not the delta of how much more cash they've accumulated. So I'm sure between some of the cash sitting in treasury bonds, they've eked out a lot of cash from that, as well as from other stock holdings like collecting the dividend money from Coca-Cola and American Express and others. So I'm sure from a lot of stock dividends and also from selling a bunch of stocks, Berkshire has upped its cash pile to that $277 billion, the last we've known as of this August. So some of that could also be from other companies Berkshire has sold off. Like once upon a time, Berkshire used to have about 48 or 49 stocks last year, and now they're down to only 41 equity holdings as of the second quarter of 2024. And also on Wall Street Journal, it's recently reported that Berkshire has been selling some Bank of America. So I don't know why Berkshire is trying to accumulate all this cash, but that's not really a great sign if you're an investor in some of these storied companies like Apple and Bank of America. And to give you a flavor of what other companies Berkshire has sold off, they include the likes of Snowflake, a cloud storage company, and Paramount, the media company that they entirely sold out of in the second quarter. And they also reduced significantly in Capital One Financial, T-Mobile, Floor & Decor, Louisiana Pacific Corp, Chevron, Liberty Media, and yet they've offset that by buying a company I don't know called Heiko and Ulta Beauty, which I'm familiar of. As you can probably tell, I don't really shop there personally much myself, but I've gotten things occasionally from there, and I've heard great things about Ulta from some investors I respect. So while it's a very small holding that Berkshire's getting into Ulta, it seems interesting and maybe a compelling buy if we were to go into a recession, and perhaps Ulta could be a recession-proof type stock, who knows? And one stock that Berkshire has been buying a lot of for the last several quarters is Occidental Petroleum with ticker Oxy. So that could be an interesting stock to look into. While we know that Berkshire doesn't intend to buy Oxy outright, it's compelling that they're buying more of it every quarter, it feels like, for the last couple of years. So they also bought more of Chubb Limited, as well as some Liberty, and also this is the Liberty Sirius, so it's not Liberty Media, which is interesting. And they also bought a lot of Sirius XM holdings. So between some of these additions, that makes the total Berkshire equity stock portfolio now worth $280 billion. And that's come down about $70 billion from their previous all-time stock portfolio high of last year, when they used to own way more Apple at about $350 billion of an equity portfolio. But in spite of all the stocks they're selling and accumulating this huge cash pile, that hasn't dented the Berkshire stock price, because at the time I'm recording this, it's now about $460 a share. So it's run up a lot. Like I think year to date, it's up 28%. And that's pretty incredible that it was around $360 a share at the beginning of 2024. So it's pretty impressive that Berkshire's up, and they're almost at $1 trillion. Like when I last checked, Berkshire's valuation was at $987 billion. So who knows how much more it can run up this year, and it's only August. So it's a little bit surprising if Berkshire has anywhere more up to go. But it looks like, in spite of selling a bunch of stocks and their cash pile almost being equal to their equity portfolio holding, which leaves about, I think from my calculations, around $430 billion worth that they still have value of the remaining Berkshire companies. So the Berkshire companies, you're really only paying $430 billion at 43.5% of the portfolio, and between Berkshire's cash and stocks holdings, those make up about 56.5%. So that's pretty impressive. I don't know how much more Berkshire will accomplish this year and whatever the soon-to-be 94-year-old Buffett might be up to this year, he's obviously got a lot of tricks up his sleeve. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out in the third quarter, especially with the Federal Reserve cutting rates. Will we see Berkshire put that money to work in an actual company that they might buy outright, or will they buy portions of company stocks, or will they keep investing in US Treasury bonds or Japanese companies or Japanese currency, or who knows what Berkshire might invest in based on the brilliance of Warren Buffett? We'll just have to stay tuned, but that about does it for my current recap of what Berkshire did in the second quarter. I'll be eagerly awaiting what they do in the third quarter, and we should find out those results by mid-November this year. So a little bit right after Election Day, we'll see what kinds of moves Berkshire will have been making throughout September, October this year. And I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll be curious. Actually, sorry, I take that back. It'll be interesting to see what moves Berkshire made this summer between July and end of September, because that would mark the end of the third quarter. So sorry, we'll see the results of July, August, and September by mid-November this year, as that's about 45 days after the end of the quarter. So keep that in mind if we want to see what Berkshire's up to. And I usually like checking out what super investors have been invested in on Dataroma. I'm not sponsored or anything, so that's just what I happen to like checking out. And you could feel free to check out what other super investors are invested in by keeping tabs on their 13F filings when they come out. And a site like Dataroma or Whale Wisdom or others have these 13F filings. And even the SEC Edgar site, even though it's not quite as user-friendly. So wherever you get your information about what some of the best investors are invested in, I'm sure it will be very educational for you. But whether they buy or sell out of certain companies doesn't mean that you have to buy and sell out of them. Like sometimes it could be a bit of a red herring, like when Berkshire had bought into Paramount, and at the annual meeting, Buffett admitted to how that was 100% his mistake and they quickly sold out of Paramount. So don't be eager to buy into certain companies just because you see Berkshire buying into them. It's not always the right investment for us retail investors, but it could give a hint as to what potentially might be coming down the line, or it doesn't matter. Like Tim Cook obviously believes that Apple is a great buy, even at the current $200 per share price range. So maybe Tim Cook is more right than Buffett. Who knows? I don't know what went into Berkshire selling off all that Apple, and maybe they'll buy back more Apple in the future if there's maybe a stock market crash. You never know. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. So we're just trying to guess what will happen and see what could eventually be a good stock market opportunity. But of course, we're not trying to time the market. So don't try to do that necessarily. Just keep tabs and do your research. And if you recognize a good buying opportunity, like a stock you've been following is suddenly at a lower price than maybe it had been, that could be an opportunity to buy into it if you know that this company will come back from maybe a little setback and you think they'll be better in the future. So with all that, if you enjoyed this video or learned something, please like and subscribe. And I wish you well on your journey to being the best investor you can be. And enjoy the rest of your summer, and happy birthday, Warren Buffett. We wish you all the best for the rest of the year. Till next time.